cryptocurrency and the blockchain technology which supports it. Don't ask me because I'm just beginning to study this subject. I don't even have time to do it. And that Bitcoin should have started at such a little bit of money for one Bitcoin, and then keep on going up and up and up and up and up until we're somewhere about 15, 20,000 now.
20
Yes.
was 40.
Yeah.
These are not ordinary events taking place in the world of money. So I would like to share the time tonight with devoting time, first of all, to the subject of money. I don't know whether you're familiar with my thoughts on the subject. If you've been, no. I have a book entitled The Gold Dinar and Silver Dirham, Islam and the Future of Money, written perhaps 10 years ago, in which I have tried to go to the Quran to define what is money. It is lamentable that we consistently ignore the Quran in the pursuit of knowledge. So before I proceed, I have a story to tell you. I did my master's in philosophy at Karachi University, and I completed the first degree at the Alimi Institute of Islamic Studies in Pakistan, Karachi, under the guidance of my teacher, Maulana Fadlur Rahman, Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah. And I was too impatient to stay for the second degree. I wanted out. My mother was ill. Maulana cried, but I wanted out. We are stupid when you're young. But before I left, he hugged me. He said, I know the character of this ummah today. He doesn't want me to be an imam in a masjid, and he who pays the piper calls the tune. He wants me to be able to function independently, earn my own livelihood, so I can give a khutbah, and if you don't like it, you can't fire me. So I went back home and I applied for the Foreign Service of Trinidad and Tobago. And they interviewed me, the panel of interviewers, and they said, we would like to have you in the Foreign Service, Mr. Hussain. You will bring to the Foreign Service something richer for us. But we want you to go back to university and do a postgraduate degree in international relations. The government of Trinidad and Tobago had turned, at the time of independence, very sensibly so to Switzerland, not to the United States and not to Britain, for the Swiss government to get the Graduate Institute of International Studies in Geneva, the most famous institution of Europe, to establish a branch in Trinidad to train diplomats for the Caribbean. So the Swiss were running the institute for about 10 years, training diplomats. And the class was limited to about 20, 23 people. And you were selected from different islands, from the foreign ministries and so on. Very, very, very difficult to get in. The year that I was sent was the first year that we had local people take over from the Swiss. And the director of the institute was a man from Haiti, Professor Dr. Leslie Manigat. In all my life, I've never met a man with such brilliance, absolute brilliance, in the analysis of political affairs and political history and so on. But when I entered the class of 23 students, they were all graduates from British universities and American universities and French universities, Canadian, and poor Imran, Pakistani degree. So they're all looking down, what is he doing here with a Pakistani degree? And worse still, he's studying to be a priest, a Muslim priest. What is he doing here amongst us diplomats? So they were looking down at me. What they didn't know, and they were soon to know, was that I was not coming to the classroom alone. I was coming into the classroom with the Quran. And my teacher had taught me how to use the Quran. To study politics, to study economics, to study monetary economics, to study sociology, to study psychology. The technology, the methodology, how to do it. Go to the Quran to study, as you do in medicine. When the classes started, and I started asking questions and making comments, their mouths were open. They're looking around at each other. They couldn't believe one voice in the whole class. At the end of the 1 year, I had never studied economics in my life before. At the end of the year, I came first at the exams. I beat the fellow with a master's degree from the London School of Economics. I beat him in economics. How did I do it? How did I do it? I did it because my teacher had taught me how to go to the Quran as the fountain of all knowledge, absolute knowledge in the Quran. This is the first sign of respect for the Quran, that you do not bypass the Quran when you're studying microbiology. You do not bypass the Quran when you're studying physics. You go first to the Quran, but you must have the methodology how to study the Quran. If we had that methodology, we would not be where we are today. When I went to Pakistan in 1964, $1, you wouldn't believe it. $1 was worth 1 rupee. 1 rupee, 75 paisas. You remember that?
Not that old.
You're not that old?
Unfortunately.
Okay. You make me feel good now.
I'm glad I make somebody.
$1 was 1 rupee 75 paisa at that time. So in my lifetime, I have lived to see the total collapse of money in Pakistan. Shameful, catastrophic collapse. And in consequence of that, an Indian Muslim community, which 100 years ago was sending money to the Arabs to help them with their poor, and they were dependent on money from India because they were so poor. 100 years later, these people are now so poor. Anywhere in the world they can get a passport to get out. They want out because this is hell. And Bangladesh, the same thing, and Indonesia, the same thing, and Morocco, the same thing, and Algeria, the same thing, and Tunisia, the same thing. And the list is endless. The whole of Africa, the same thing. And how did it happen? Like the vacuum cleaner that you use to clean the carpet, it sucks. The monetary system functioning like a vacuum cleaner, sucking the wealth of the rest of the world, and bringing that wealth to another part of the world. Such a point. It is, of course, unjust. It is unethical. It is ripping off people. And in the Quran it's called riba. In the Quran it's called riba. And the very last revelation to come to the Prophet ﷺ, just before he died, is after he made the Hajj, the farewell Hajj. And he returns to Medina and he has 81 days left in his life. During those 81 days, Allah sends the last revelation. And in the last revelation, he declares war on riba. The strongest language in the whole Quran is here. If you do not give up your demand for riba, then take notice of a declaration of war from Allah and His Messenger. This is the last revelation to come down. And if we neglect the subject of riba, then we are betraying the Quran. Betraying the Quran. If we had been faithful to the Quran, then we would have gone to the Quran to study what is money. Because I took the Quran into the classroom. At the end of the 1 year of postgraduate studies, I came first in the class in international politics, in international economics, not in international law. I wasn't good in that. In the history of international relations and diplomacy in Islam, I came first in the class. And the reason for that was the Quran. We have this, therefore, this imperative today. If we are to even understand the phenomenon of cryptocurrencies and bitcoins and electronic money and digital money, which is about to sweep the world. And the beginning of the process a year and a few months ago, with an Indian government that is acting as a shoeshine boy of Wall Street. That's what the Indian government is doing now. Betraying the Hindu religion. Because the Hinduism is emphatic in its requirement of honesty in business. Yes. And I have to remind the pundit of that your government is betraying Hinduism the way every Pakistani government has betrayed Islam from day one. Day one. The Indian government a year and a few months ago demonetized the two biggest banknotes or money, currency notes in India, the 1,000 rupee note and the 500 rupee note. And we subsequently realized that this was the beginning, the initial phase of what is eventually going to become the demonetization of all paper money. You begin with the big notes until eventually you will be embraced in something that is fascinatingly called a cashless world. They have this peculiar capacity to create expressions that are exotic in nature. A cashless world. And now you don't need cash anymore. You don't. It's only a dum-dum who walks around with cash in his pocket. Sensible, intelligent people who are able to move with the times, to move with a changing world, because you have to be intelligent, and intelligent people have a smartphone. because the phone is smart. So you now use a card, and you swipe and swipe and swipe and pay all your bills and so on. Everything is done electronically. Why is this happening? And is this money halal or haram? The European Union then announced that the 500 euro note, which is the biggest note in Europe, will be demonetized this year. And in Sweden and the Scandinavian countries now, I'm told that about 1% of transactions now are done in cash. 99% of all transactions are now being done electronically. When we go to the Quran to study the subject of money, we find that in the Quran there's the word dinar. And the dinar in the Quran is a coin of gold. And it was used as money. It was used as money for thousands of years.
In Iraq, it's still used.
It was used as money by all the prophets of Allah. It was used as money by our messenger, our prophet, whose birth anniversary is celebrated with gusto, with shining lights and beating drums and wow, 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 wow. He used this money before dinar. And in the Quran there is the dirham, the silver coin, and it was used as money for buying and selling. And when we make the mistake to remind them of this, they are suddenly silent, ominously silent, shamefully silent. Why don't you just leave us to beat the drums, man? This is Miladun Nabi. The Prophet is this and that and that and that and that and that and that. But we don't want to be reminded of this one. That is a dangerous and ominous development. It's a spade, and you have to have the courage to call a spade, regardless of consequences. And I don't care two peanuts at all about those who are offended when I expose their hypocrisy. Celebrating the praises of the Prophet, singing his praises, chanting his praises, reminding he is this and he is that and he is that and he is that and he is that. Dividing themselves from all other Muslims because of this extremely great love they have for Allah's Messenger. And yet, these pathetic creatures don't want to hear that he used dinar and dirham as money. I have to denounce these pathetic creatures. They can throw stones at me if they want. I don't care two peanuts who they are. You are betraying the messenger of Allah. I cannot even remind you that this is money in the Quran. I cannot even remind you that this is money in the Sunnah, that he used this money. And when Imam al-Mahdi comes, it is this money he's going to be using, not the US dollar. And when Nabi Isa alayhi salam returned, it is this money he'll be using. And when we look to the Quran, we find not only the gold dinar, we find a silver dirham, we find kintar, and a kintar is a treasure. In a monetary system built on gold and silver coins as money, Allah's law is applied, no one can accumulate wealth beyond a quintal. That is the maximum you could reach before the system intervenes to break down wealth. And a quintal is about 1,200 dinars. Today, with this sophisticated monetary order which has come from the Western world, one man can earn more wealth than the whole of Pakistan combined. Look at what is there in the Quran and look at what is there in their monetary system. Shameless that one man or a handful of people, a dozen people, could earn and to be more wealthy than the whole of Africa. Something is smelling stink in that monetary system to produce this atrocious imbalance, this huge accumulation of wealth in the hands of a few, and the masses around the world living in abject, miserable poverty. And then you go and put salt in the wound and blame them for their poverty. And these who are wealthy, they are industrious, they are sensible, they are wise. And that's how they become rich. Except for one Pakistani man who came to see me 2 weeks ago and was worried that they had left Pakistan and come here, and they had worked so hard to build themselves here so they can leave for their children and their grandchildren something of substance. And this miserable son that he has wants to go back to Pakistan. So he came to me for help. He said, Sheikh, let me tell you, it was Allah who ordained all the wealth to come here because Allah knew we were going to come here. So he brought the wealth here so we would have the wealth. Yes. This happened 2 weeks ago. When we turn to the Quran, we find not only dinar and dirham and quintal, but in Surah Al-Kahf, the young men slept in the cave for 300 years. And when they woke up, they were hungry and they had some money. And the Quran describes it as worry. And we're not really interested in the meaning of the word worry. That's not important. What is important is that after 300 years, this money had functioned successfully as a store of value. That if it could buy this amount of food 300 years ago, it could still buy it today. The most important money in the world today, on the basis, on whose base the whole world of money rests, is the US dollar. If you don't know that, you've got to go to the International Monetary Fund and study it. And Bretton Woods and study it. If you had 20 US dollars 100 years ago, with that 20 US dollars you could buy an ounce of gold. Yeah. And if you take the same 20 US dollars today, not only can you not buy the ounce of gold, you probably cannot even get more than a grain, because an ounce of gold now is about $12, $13, $1,400. Huh? But compare this with that. When I was in 1947, I was 5 years of age. Were you born as yet?
Long
You're
way.
still young. In 47, I was 5 years of age. My father was a school principal, and he bought a car, a British Hillman Minks car, so he could take me to school. But he now also take me to the market on Saturdays, and I'll be there 5 years of age with my little basket, going with my father. And I saw him buy 100 oranges, wholesale price, for $1 of our money. 70 years later, when I go to the same market with $1, I can't buy even one orange. Compare this with that which is in the Quran. There is yet another reference to money in the Quran. This one shows that this money successfully functions as money in terms of the function of money as a store of value. This one doesn't leak. And then there is yet another reference to money in the Quran, again in Surah Al-Kahf, of a man who is dying and was leaving orphans behind. He dug a hole and he buried the money and then built a structure, a wall. And since Surah Al-Kahf is the surah of Akhirul Zaman, it is intended to send a message to us 1400 years later that when they come with their censers, they will not be able to find the money because you built a structure on top of it. Now I ask, could you bury electronic money? Could you bury bitcoins? When we leave the Quran and we go to the Hadith, how much time do I have?
You can. We've got this covered. How much time?
This is my last lecture. I'm leaving tomorrow, so I don't mind spending.
It's up to you. Covered. It's up to you, sir.
The companion of the Prophet ﷺ, Bilal radiallahu ta'ala, came to the Prophet ﷺ and offered him some dates. The Prophet said, Bilal, these are high quality dates. Where did you get them? Bilal said, O Messenger of Allah, I had 2 sa'a, but today we might use the word kilogram, 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates, and I exchanged them for this 1 kilogram of superior quality dates. In value, it was a fair exchange. The Prophet said, Bilal, this is the essence of riba. And that's a very big sin. Allah and His Messenger waging war on riba. What you should have done was to sell the 2 kilograms of inferior quality dates and take that money and buy the 1 kilogram. But a direct exchange of dates for dates that was unequal, was haram, was riba. But Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu exchanged 4 camels for 1. These were baby camels, this was an adult. And that was not haram, and that was not riba. An unequal exchange of camels, no problem. An unequal exchange of dates, haram, riba. Why? You have to ask Mufti the question. Ask him. The answer lies in another hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ is speaking about a transaction which involves an exchange of gold for gold, or silver for silver, or wheat for wheat, or barley for barley, or dates for dates as this one, or salt for salt. 6 things. And he says, if you have such a transaction, it must be equal for equal. If you have 1 kilogram on this side, you must have 1 kilogram on this side. You cannot have two. It must be equal for equal. And he said one more thing. It must be hand to hand, meaning it cannot be a credit transaction. If it is hand to hand, it cannot be a credit transaction. When we examine all 6, we find that they were all used as money. If there was a shortage of gold and silver coins in the market in Yathrib, which is today called Medina, then they would use dates as money. Of course, you will use dates as money for microtransactions. You won't buy a house with dates. Therefore, from this we have a theory of money which emerges from the Quran and Sunnah. That money in Islam is always either gold and silver, or when gold and silver are in short supply, then money in Islam will always be an article of food consumption, which number 1 is in abundant supply in the market, which number 2 has a shelf life. It's not like mangoes. And number 3, it has intrinsic value. The value of the money is always in the money created by Allah. That value can fluctuate based on demand and supply, but is always a value created by Allah and not by a man named George Soros. Because dates were used as money, if you allow a transaction of an exchange of 1 kilogram for 2, you will open the door for the money lender, who will now lend you 1 kilogram of dates, and you'll have to return 2 kilograms of dates, which constitute a loan with 100% interest. But because animals could not be used as money, it was permissible to have an unequal exchange of animals. So there you are. In just a few minutes, I've introduced you to what is money in the Quran and what is money in the Sunnah. And this is what money was all through the ages, except that we had a very, very, very strong law in Islam. Punishment is sometimes reformatory. I'm punishing you to make you a better person. That is the philosophy of punishment for alcohol and alcoholism. We punish you to try to get you out of the alcohol. Punishment can also be I don't know if this is the correct word, retaliatory punishment or something else better than that. Anyhow, if you take a life, then justice demands that you pay for it with your life, a life for a life. The law of equity. There's a special word for it, I'm escaping. This is reformatory. And this is something else. And then there's punishment, which is deterrent punishment. I'm punishing you not just for what you did, but I'm punishing you to ensure that nobody else will do what you did. Deterrent punishment. So Allah reserves deterrent punishment for someone who is stealing. Sometimes you steal by putting your hand in the man's pocket, but many times you steal because your hand is underneath the table. And the punishment is to cut off the hand. There are those who are more learned than Allah, And they say this is barbaric punishment because they have more knowledge than Allah. Yes. But when you apply this punishment, like for example, one of you take control of Pakistan. You now form the government. And you said, I want to ensure that this country will function on the basis of honesty. That's my first priority. So those who have stolen, we give them a certain amount of time. Come forward, confess for what you've stolen, and return what you've stolen. And then our court may decide to have amnesty. You may be forgiven. When that date is over, then after that, whoever we arrest and try and is found guilty of what today they call it corruption, we're going to cut off your hand. We're warning you. This government of Pakistan is going to enforce Allah's law. We're going to cut off your hand. I think the U.S. Marines are going to land the next day. Huh? Because this is really deterrent punishment. From the time you declare that, you'll find so many people buying tickets for New York and for Miami, and the suitcases are being packed very quickly. Let's get out of this country quickly. Because you cannot afford to have your hand cut off. This is Allah's law. And then once you start to enforce that law, that's it. You'll have a very clean and honest Pakistan. The market will be clean. So this is why when you have this monetary system operating, and you have this system of law operating, you're able to have an economy which is healthy and prosperous, and people can now work and get the fruit of their labor. Good. We have to turn to the subject of eschatology to understand the mysterious phenomenon of British and European wars of conquest, expanding. Their armies taking over the rest of the world. And when they go, it's not just like a raider who goes to raid and then go back home. No, they've come to stay and to establish the government. And they then call it their colony. And it's called colonization. And when they colonize you, they have an objective far more than simply taking your money. They want to take your soul as well. Yes. They want to take your soul as well. I have great love for Dr. Muhammad Iqbal. Oh yes. I have great respect for him as an outstanding scholar. And I consider him to be one of my teachers. Oh yes. And when I offer a critical comment about Iqbal, I never do so with any hatred in my heart, vindictively to try to bring the man down. But if you make a mistake, I've got to say you made a mistake. And if the Pakistani people get annoyed with me for that, I don't care 2 peanuts for them. I don't care 2 peanuts for them. If they get annoyed because I offer a critical comment, is Iqbal your God? Is Jinnah your God? Huh? They came not only to take your wealth, they came for more than that. They colonize you to take your soul. They colonize you to take you and transform you into a carbon copy of themselves. That's why they came. And one of the instruments that they use to take control of you so that they could transform you into carbon copies of themselves was to take gold and silver out of the market as money and to replace it with their bogus monetary system. And in all the whole world of colonies, the most important one of all was India. If you could succeed with India, it would be easy for the rest of the world to be absorbed. So this is the biggest nut of all, India. In the world of Islam, Indian Muslim scholarship stood preeminently in the world. Indian Muslim scholarship. And all the rest of the world of Islam looked up to Indian Muslim scholarship. So if you could take Indian Muslim scholarship for a ride, it's going to be easy, plain sailing for the rest of the world of Islam. So all their guns were trained on India. When they brought their bogus money to India, there were some ulama who, with great wisdom and knowledge and integrity and courage, stood up and said, no, this is haram. But there were few. And today their names are forgotten. Nobody remembers them today, who they were. I can't get their names. Who were those ulama who stood up with knowledge and wisdom and integrity and courage and declared that this money which is coming out of Britain is haram and we must stay with our gold and silver coins? But there were few. And the establishment, the established scholars, the outstanding ones, the one who are allamas, either assisted, accepted, offered fatwa, it's okay, or remain mysteriously silent, and yet remain allama. And up to this day, they are honored as allama. But they're like mouse, they never uttered a word about the bogus money. And those who had the courage are today forgotten. We don't even know where their graves are. And when India was conquered with money, and the British got the gold and silver out of the market, and all of India, Hindus and Muslims, all of them started using the paper money, it was easy sailing now for them to take over the rest of the world of Islam and the rest of the world. And so we who have come, I come from, my father told me our family came from Hyderabad, Deccan. But one uncle said, no, your father is wrong. Family came from Afghanistan and they moved to Hyderabad, Deccan. I don't know which one is correct. So we have a special place in history, Indian Muslims, a special place in history, that because of our failure, to use the most polite word I can find, because of our failure, the rest of the world was trapped. They came with paper as money, and they started it here in this island, the island of Britain. It was 1697, 96 perhaps, when the Bank of England was established. And the Bank of England started to issue what they called a promissory note. And quickly the bank found itself in hot waters because the promissory note were redeemable in gold. The British sterling pound was a gold coin. The promissory note meant that you could take it to the bank and get the gold coin. But the bank started issuing more paper than they had gold. And today they have a sophisticated name for this fraud. They call it fractional reserve banking. But it's fraud. You Your hand should be cut off for this. But the bank survived. This was the initial process to see how the system works. And because the scholars never stood up to declare that this is fraud, the bank was eventually able to sell this new system of money to France and to the rest of Europe. A man named John Law was his name, an Englishman, John Law, went across to France, went to other European countries, and sold the idea. This is a nice way to become rich. All you have to do is to issue a note which is redeemable in gold. And as they accept it, you print more paper than you have gold. You make money out of thin air. Easy way. And the governments and the kings and so on, the emperors and so on, bought the idea quickly. And then came 1944 with the Bretton Woods Accord in New York, upstate New York, where the victors of the Second World War got together, and they decided we're going to establish an international monetary system now. And the international monetary system now, we said, yes, we'll issue the promissory notes, but only one will be redeemable in gold. Only one. And it's the US dollar. Because the United States wants to replace Britain. And Pax Britannica Pax Americana wants to replace Pax Britannica as the ruling state in the world. But to rule the world, only this currency will be redeemable in gold, the US dollar. And all the rest of the world, including all these followers of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, all of them, will have the value of their paper on the basis of the relationship with this paper, the US dollar. And Muhammad Ali Jinnah never studied this subject. He studied law at a British university, but he didn't know anything about the subject of paper money. And so when Pakistan was born, of course you have to have the Bank of Pakistan, State Bank of Pakistan. At the State Bank of Pakistan, yes, you see the same paper. And I'm using the most polite language that I can. I can use more violent language. And then in doing this, you are accepting the United States of America as your Lord and Master. Yeah. One Pakistani leader was not too happy with this relationship of servitude to the United States. So he wrote a book, you may have heard about it. He says, Friends, not masters. What was his name? Huh?
Ayub Khan.
That's right. Field Marshal Ayub Khan. Friends, not masters. If he had studied the Quran, then he would not put in the word friends, not masters. He would put in something else, neither friends nor masters. Because the Quran prohibits us from being friends of a certain people. If we were studying the Quran. But the sad news is we have betrayed the Quran and we're not even aware that we have betrayed the Quran, so we eat our biryani very comfortably and go home and sleep. In the Quran, Allah speaks and He says, to the angels to make sajda before Adam alayhi salam. Fasajadu, so they all made sajda except illa Iblis. So because we have something called a rational faculty, a capacity to think, and we know something about elementary logic, if the order was given to the angels and they all obeyed except one, the implication, logical implication would be that the one who did not obey had to be an angel. Full stop. Allah is not deficient in the use of language. No. He has constructed it in such a way so that if you use a schoolboy methodology, you'll come to this conclusion. He's teaching you a lesson in methodology, how to study the Quran. If you use the wrong methodology, you'll come to the conclusion that Iblis was an angel. You can't get away from that. But then when you turn to the other pages of the Quran, you find to your embarrassment now that the Quran says about angels, they don't have any capacity to disobey. وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. When Allah gives an order, an angel cannot disobey. Must obey. But he disobeyed. So now logic, he can't be an angel. And then elsewhere in the Quran, Allah now says, وَكَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ. So what Allah has done in this very simple and beautiful way is to teach, a methodology, how to study the Quran. Do not take a verse of the Quran in isolation. Study it. Full stop, I've done my work. Or do not take any part of a verse in isolation. Study it, and you come to your conclusion, full stop, you can go home and sleep. That is not the way to study the Quran. So now let's take this verse of the Quran that Ayub Khan probably never studied. And neither Iqbal. Regretfully so. I can't speak about Jinnah because Jinnah never pretended to be a scholar of Islam. No. All Jinnah did was, you have decided you want this kind of a state, and I'll deliver it to you. And that's what he did. That's it. He delivered to you what you chose. You wanted, he delivered to you. And he had the capacity to do it. So don't blame Jinnah. Blame Iqbal. This is in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And Allah is speaking about Jews and Christians, and about our relationship as Muslims with Jews and Christians. And he says, I'm giving you what the Arabic text says, don't take Jews and don't take Christians as your friends and allies, and then with wrong methodology you put a full stop. لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء. Wrong methodology, you put a full stop. They are friends and allies of each other. Full stop. Wrong methodology. بعضهم أولياء بعض. And whosoever from amongst you turn to them for friendship and alliance, you belong to them. Full stop. Surely Allah does not provide guidance for a wicked people. Full stop. All of this together constitute one verse of the Quran with several sentences. Wrong punctuation. This statement that I just gave you is false. You are attributing a falsehood to the Quran. The Jews and Christians are friends and allies of each other is false. At the time when the Quran was revealed, Jews and Christians were not friends and allies of each other. Prior to the revelation of the Quran, Jews and Christians were never friends and allies of each other. And for more than 1,000 years after the revelation of the Quran, Jews and Christians were never friends and allies of each other. So to say that Jews and Christians are friends and allies of each other is monstrously false, blatantly false, transparently false. Even a schoolboy will say this is false. And this is what in your Quran. Something is wrong. with the methodology employed for understanding this verse of the Quran. Yes. If you remove the punctuation, you get something else. If you study the verse as a whole rather than part by part, Allah could not be speaking about all Christians when He says, don't take the Christians as your friends and allies. Why? Because in that part of the Quran, He's saying that there will be a time to come when the people who will be closest in love and affection for you Muslims will be a Christian people. Yes, the same Quran is saying that. So it is clear He could not be speaking about all Christians. And therefore He could not be speaking about all Jews. Now we ask the question, well, which Jews is He talking about and which Christians? And when we ask this question, the answer comes immediately in the words which follow. Ba'aduhum awliya'u ba'd. Allah is saying that if that time were to come, when Jews and Christians reconcile and become friends and allies of each other, then do not take such Jews and such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. And whosoever turns to them with friendship and alliance to such an extent that one day you will bend your knee to get the highest national order and become Sir Muhammad Iqbal. You'll bend your knee that Jeremy Corbyn will not bend his knee. Yes, Jeremy Corbyn refuses to bend his knee before the Queen. But you will bend your knee because you have served Britain so well. Britain will not give you the knighthood for your service to the cause of Islam. Britain will give you a knighthood for your service to Britain. That's why Britain will give you a knighthood. Because you have served Britain. And Allah is saying, do not take such Jews and such Christians as your friends and allies, who themselves are friends and allies of each other. Will that day ever come? When part of the Christian world and part of the Jewish world will reconcile and form friendship and alliance? It started right here in Britain. The Zionist, Judeo-Christian Zionist, the Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance was built here. The foundations were built here in Britain. And eventually, when they were ready, they went to Basel. They went to Basel. And after they went to Basel, a couple of years later, they could issue the Balfour Declaration. Iqbal had no knowledge whatsoever of what Allah prohibited in the Quran. None. And I still consider him to be my teacher. I still honor him and respect him as a great scholar. Allah is speaking of precisely the Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance, which has taken control of modern Western civilization and which creating this monetary system, which culminated in the Bretton Woods Accord and the creation of the International Monetary Fund. And Allah is telling us, don't do it. Don't join them. And all of us, hook, line, and sinker, everybody, including Maulana and Mufti and Sheikh and the whole works, all of us join them. What a pathetic ummah it is today. So you'll excuse me if sometimes my language is violent and not kind of courteous language you'd expect. But, yes?
So I just came in and straight away understood, as soon as you explained the monetary system, I straight away understood that you're right, what you're saying, in the way you're describing the current financial system. And I never knew that until you explained it within the last 5 minutes, and I grasped what you said. And
I'm only explaining where it came from.
yeah, it just really, and I didn't know that. But as soon as you explained it, it was crystal clear. You're right. Okay, I understand the economy is built on a false currency, and it shouldn't be that way. It seems totally haram. But why not just create a new currency? Like, why don't we establish gold currency? Would that just not solve the problem, and we would have a normal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't we simply bring back the dinar and dirham?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
with
it's
gold,
brilliant.
Why not?
I'll answer you why. Those who created this bogus monetary system created the International Monetary Fund. And the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund prohibit the use of gold as money. Once you are a member state of the IMF, and all the countries of the world are now member state of the IMF, you are prohibited from using gold as money. So what China is doing, in order to get around the prohibition of the IMF, because China wants to see the US dollar collapse, the petrodollar collapse, so China said, we'll bring the petro-yuan to demolish the petrodollar. So China is saying to Saudi Arabia, because China is now the biggest customer for Saudi Arabia, so the Saudis can't simply say no. We will buy your oil for you and pay you in yuan. And when we pay you in yuan, we are prepared to redeem the yuan for gold for you at the market rate. We'll buy the gold in the market and redeem. So China is in effect saying, we'll buy your oil for you and pay you in gold, which is a halal transaction. But China cannot do it directly this way, oil for gold. Why? Why? I just told you.
Sorry?
I just told you. Because it is prohibited by international law, their international law. That's the answer.
Okay.
Because the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund prohibit it. This is what the Quran has ordered us. And Iqbal never knew it. And he is the father, not Jinnah. He is the father of Pakistan. This was not his only failure. This was not his only failure. But this failure took place in Iqbal because of an inadequate study of the Quran. Okay? Yeah.
But for example, Bitcoin, that is on a grassroots level, they created it, the currency themselves, decentralized, and why can't it just be like, again, on a grassroots level, just re-establish gold as a currency? Like, if, for example,
Can we accept Bitcoins as halal money?
No, I'm not. I'm not saying Bitcoin is halal. I'm
Yeah.
saying that it was the foundation. It was built by on a grassroots level, not on an international level. It was just built by me, someone like me, in a bedroom. created it just
Individuals,
like
yeah,
that.
whose
We can
names you
create-
don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who. created it.
Mysterious individuals, yeah, who
Yeah.
are behind the parda.
Yeah, but if, for example, myself, if I was going out now, I could go and create a gold coin. I could go and mine some gold. Make a
Yes,
coin,
you
and-
can have at a micro level.
Yes, at a micro level.
You can have in Southall at a micro level. Once it does not threaten their system, they will turn a blind eye
Yeah.
to a few shops in Southall willing to accept dinar and dirham to buy a sari or buy a kurta shalwar. It does not threaten their system.
Yeah.
But the minute your use of gold and silver as money threatens their system, the police are going to come and seize your gold and silver. They find a reason to seize it, yes, and you'll be gone. Yeah. So now, what I've done is, I believe I've spoken long enough. What I have done is to take you to the Quran and to the Sunnah, and then take you briefly to modern monetary economics. And now finally, I've left out the eschatology because that's going to take more time now. They're now moving away from the US dollar. They want, the ones who constructed the system don't need the US dollar anymore. They have something better in store. So they have to cause the rather crash, they want to demolish the system. But it has to be demolished in such a way that it has a soft landing, not like 9/11. A soft landing. If you have a crash, then large numbers of white Americans are going to lose their wealth overnight, and they all have guns in America. So that's going to be very, very dangerous. You're going to have bloodshed and anarchy, and the American police and armed forces will not be able to contain that bloodshed. And Dajjal is sensible, he's not a fool. So he wants a soft landing for the US dollar. And he wants a landing for the US dollar in such a way that the Americans will blame themselves for their loss and not blame the government. So you come with bitcoins, for example. And someone sent me this lovely story to explain exactly how the system works. He says a businessman came to a town where there are lots of monkeys, and the monkeys were on sale at $2 each, and he offered to buy them for $10. What a foolish man. Everybody rushed to sell their monkeys for $10. When he bought them all, he says, I'm going to raise it now to 20. So you can find more monkeys. And then he raised it to 100, so you can find more monkeys. I'm buying them all. Bought them all. When there were no more monkeys, he said, okay, I'm leaving. Go and search and search and search and search and search. I'm going to come back, and if you find any monkeys, I'll buy them for 1,000. And the man has kept his word so far. And then he left. And he left behind his assistant, who when the boss had left, he said, this man is not giving me anything. I deserve something. And I'm prepared to make a deal with you. I'm going to sell you all his monkeys at 700. And when he comes, you can get 1,000 for it. But I'm going to have to disappear because I'm taking his monkeys. So they all rushed to buy all the monkeys at 700 each, and then this fella disappeared, and they're waiting for the businessman to come, and he never came. So they were left buying monkeys for 700, which were in the market for $2. And so the Americans will blame themselves that we were ripped off, we were fools, rather than blame the government and take out guns and so on. This is what's going to happen with Bitcoin. It's like casino money. Can this money be halal? It has no intrinsic value. It is not a reliable store of value. No. It does not have value which created by Allah. It's not halal money. And because it is used to rip off people, it's riba, it's haram. So why are they bringing in the casino money? Is it simply to rip off people more? I said the first reason appears to me to be to bring about the demolition of the US dollar. And as a consequence, I've come to the conclusion that this is meant to also allow, to facilitate the demonetization of all paper money. So that the future, maybe a year, 2 years from now, will be a world of only a cashless world, a world of electronic money. And the ominous implications of that. When you study the Quran, you'll know that they have the jinn working with them. And these are not jinn who are Muslim, these are jinn who are shayateen. Go to Surah to Sa'ad and you'll see it there. This is eschatology. So the best supercomputer in the world can't match a jinn. When how many billion people are on the face of the earth today? And you have 1 billion accounts, because each individual has an account. Everything that you buy and sell is going to have an electronic trail. Everything. Even if you buy chicken tikka, it's there. So they'll have the capacity now to sweep all through the accounts, 1 billion of them, and see which ones are not buying alcohol, and put a red flag there. No alcohol. And then they have other checks to see what's your profile. And when they find a profile of someone who wants to be faithful to Islam, they'll then come for you to say, do you have children? Are you trying to avoid sending your children to a school where they'll be taught that a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate? That you prefer to homeschool your children rather than to betray your children by sending them for that education? When they have your profile, and now it's easy for them, because everything is electronic, they will then find a reason, an excuse to send the police and seize your children and give your children to foster care, where they'll be taught in the school where a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate. And at that time, of course, you come shake him round. What can I do? What can I do? My answer at that time, please find another Maulana and leave me alone. Stop wasting. This is, I believe, this is perhaps one of the biggest dangers of the new monetary system coming, because it's not meant to function simply as money. It's meant to function for other things more sinister than money. Good then, I think we've had enough. MashaAllah, thank you. Very nice.